Enjoy your beverage of choice, a cup of tea, a glass of wine, or a cup of coffee, and join John Michael Chambers for candid conversations. It's Fireside Chats with JMC. No guests, no interruptions, just John. The world according to John, as JMC reflects on issues of the day, bringing clarity to events as they unfold, making sense of the times in which we live. Keeping us informed, empowered, hopeful, inspired, and connected, as well as providing valuable resources and important announcements. Turn down the noise and daily distractions of your life and join John each month here on Fireside Chats with JMC. Subscribe for free by visiting jmcbroadcasting.com. John looks forward to your presence. Where we go one, we go all.
August 5th, 2026, we are alive. Welcome back to the GFR, the Global Financial Reset, Surviving and Thriving the Transition. And joining me today in just a moment is Will Barney, Captain Rob Cunningham, and first time in the JMC wheelhouse, Dr. Scott Young. We're honored to have the doctor with us. We'll also be hearing from Juan O'Savin. I just met with Juan in Bangkok. We got something on tape, if you want to use the old expression, and we'll be publishing that 3-hour incredible episode probably within the next 24 hours. But we will hear an excerpt from Juan and have the panel weigh in on that in today's broadcast. And thank you very much for being here. Quick announcements before we get started. Speaking of Juan, he's holding another summit with Juan O'Savin and his Chief of Staff, retired Lieutenant Colonel Matt Meck, putting together the Storm Summit, September 10th through 13th at the Ahern Hotel, again in Las Vegas. You want to get your tickets before they bump up the price. It's stormsummit.us. You want to check that out. Now, for those that can't make it to Las Vegas on those given days, you'll notice 9/11 is slammed in the middle there. We'll be streaming it live for you on our website and on our platform. So everyone can get the information. I spoke with Juan about this summit. It's going to be very, very powerful and very, very important and quite timely. All right, Scott McKay's in the house. Mark your calendars. Let's see, August 27th, 8 p.m. Eastern. Scott will be joining me and all of you in our private Zoom room for 1 solid hour live on screen, simply to answer your questions. So mark your calendars, join. How do you join? You go to jmcbroadcasting.com, click on Premium Portal, and we look forward to seeing you there. All right, let's get into this. I'm going to break down this broadcast today. Perhaps, I don't know how long it's going to be, but let's say hour one, we'll be covering some of the current economic related events that are happening today. And the second hour, we'll be hearing an excerpt from Juan O'Savin that I just met with in Bangkok a few days ago. And again, I just recorded a critically important 3-hour special broadcast with Juan yesterday, which should be published within 24 hours. And I strongly urge you to listen to that broadcast. But we'll have the panel weigh in on the questions I asked Juan concerning the RV and the Saragasara. So again, in hour two, that's what we'll be taking on before we conclude today's broadcast. Now, the 3-hour episode with Juan goes far beyond the economy, so you'll want to listen to everything that's in there. It's fresh, it's current, and it's uninterrupted. Disclaimer. The information provided by me and my guests is for educational purposes only and is not to be considered as specific investment, tax, nor legal advice. You are encouraged to do your own research and consult your financial, legal, and tax professionals. All right, Will Barney brings over 19 years of experience in the banking sector, where he has developed a strong specialization in structuring funding for commercial projects on a global scale. You can learn more about Will by visiting JMC Contributors. He hit contributors on our website, jmcbroadcasting.com. You'll see his photograph, a brief bio, and a link to his website, which is www.enochgs.com. Also joining us as returning guest, Captain Rob Cunningham is the founder of KUWL, a passion project launched in December of 2022, inspired by curiosity, a thirst for truth, and a commitment to challenging false narratives. KUWL stands for knowledge, understanding, wisdom, and life, reflecting his mission to share insights and value through research, analysis, interviews, education, and commentary. Now, Rob's personal background includes a business degree in management information systems, active duty in the United States Air Force as an instructor pilot with combat experience and top secret security clearance. He spent 2 years as a major airline pilot before being furloughed, followed by 20 years in investment and mortgage banking, and over 20 years owning and supporting a national leadership and sales development company. Thank you, Rob, for returning. Joining us first time, and we're honored to have Dr. Scott Young. Many of you know Dr. Young. He's an audiologist, author, educator, and speaker with a passion for teaching on end times prophecy, apologetics, and the Fed, and then the IRS. Music to my ears. Originally pursuing a career in education, he earned degrees in English, deaf education, audiology, and his doctorate in audiology before combining his love of teaching with his professional career. In addition to operating his audiology practice and creating hearing health content, Dr. Young produces educational YouTube videos, a popular channel focused on and the Fed and the IRS, election fraud, and hope in the last days. And that's why we have Dr. Young joining us. That's right in our wheelhouse of mission, focus, and attention. He interviews patriots and experts in areas such as military law, banking, macroeconomics, and biblical prophecy, and is regarded by many in his audience as a leading voice in the sorrow, which we're going to be talking about today from a lot of different angles. He is also the author of 19 fiction and nonfiction books. Well, you're right up there with Sheila Holmes. She's got 19 as well. He speaks at conferences online and nationwide. The introductions are done. Welcome to our guests. Thank you all very much for being here. Good morning,
John,
Vietnam.
it's good to be with you. Thank you.
Pleasure to be here, John. Thanks for having us.
I appreciate it.
Good. Thank you. Just want to make sure our audios are in sync and everything's all set.
Yeah.
Thanks, gentlemen, for being here. We got a lot to unpack. I'm going to begin actually. Let's begin with Will Barney. Before I'm going to run some important clips to our viewers of the president, and we'll have the panel weigh in on these clips. But before we get into that, Will, what's on your mind these days? What's the top of the mind news bite that's got your attention you'd like to share with our viewers?
Well, you know, the most disturbing thing that I'm seeing, John, is the fact that everybody's on these shows, particularly with the great financial reset, everybody wants to talk about money. When are we getting money? When are we getting the opportunity to have a sound money system, a clean and transparent system? And all of that is important, but it's really a secondary thing. And I think what we're not paying attention to the most is we have to first retake the sovereignty of our country back. If we don't have elections where we retake our country can't then issue sound money. So I think we're missing the boat on some of this, and we just had a whole series of primary elections. There was 3 states that ran theirs just yesterday, and what's interesting is everybody's using the same corrupt, fake voting systems that we used all the way back in 2020. Nothing's changed, and now we have a whole list of people on the ballot for November that shouldn't even be there. And so my concern is that if we don't get the foundation right, if we can't fix the sovereignty of our nation, how can we possibly get to the business of issuing sound currency for that nation? So I don't know where that leads us, but I think it leads us to a massive problem come November.
Spot on, Will. And, again, I spoke with Juan in Bangkok just the other day, and we got that on the special broadcast that I alluded to a moment ago in great detail. And you're absolutely right. You've got to have that in order before pretty much you can get anything else officially and properly accomplished, especially currency issues. I want our viewers to listen to the special broadcast. I'm not sure when it's publishing, but I believe within 24 hours. And I'll just give them a sneak preview, coattailing off of what you just said, Will, and that is the midterms. He's 99.99% certain, end quote, that they will be delayed. Not only will they be delayed, they will be delayed longer than one might think. And there's a reason for that. and he breaks it down as Juan does very well in that episode. But you're spot on, Will. I'm with you 100% there. Thanks for raising that issue. Captain Rob, anything on your mind or anything you care to respond to? Take it away.
Yeah, I love exactly what Will's saying. I mean, the ultimate sovereignty is individual sovereignty. We've got to work on the wealth. We have to work on getting ourselves right. Um, we're not capable of being good stewards. It doesn't matter how much money we have, right? We're not going to be in control. We're not going to be reigning as kings and queens if we don't have our homes in order. And money is not a magic elixir. Money is actually can be the exact opposite if we don't have our values straight, right? And so, um, as Scott Bissett says, and I think he's one of the top warriors in the Trump administration, you know, financial policy is military policy, it's national defense. And you cannot, as commander in chief, Trump can't just turn the election over and just let any bunch of yahoos come in and do what they did to us in 2020 again. It's a national security issue. Does he maybe have to just have National Guard in 16 counties and to solve 90% of the problem? Maybe that's all it will take. You know, does he have to declare a national emergency? Does he have to do an emergency broadcast? Because, you know, if we do have a problem with elections and it's a national security issue and you don't know who's in the country, you've got to get bad actors out of the country. And CBS and ABC and NBC's already proven they won't show his broadcast. Well, he's given them the precedent to do an emergency broadcast because they can mute him, just like they did with his Twitter account, just like they did 2 weeks ago. They wouldn't let him speak to the people. So now they've opened that door up. And I want to tie one last thing in. The Clarity Act in Russia passed today. Okay? Putin signed it. Now we've listened for 10 years ad nauseum, Russia, 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 Russia bad, Russia Trump, Russia collusion, Russia everything, right? So now the Democrats, if they do not pass for this Clarity Act, in essence, they're giving Russia a free rein to run ahead of America with their crypto while we stay crib death. So these folks have less than 90 days to go to the elections and the midterms. Are these Dems really going to vote no for crypto in America and let Russia run wild with crypto ahead of us and then go back and expect to get elected? I mean, they're damned if they do and damned if they don't. They don't want to pass it because the bankers are telling them no. And if they don't, they're siding with Russia. They're aiding and abetting Russia by kneecapping our crypto advances in the monetary system and letting them go ahead with Japan and everything. Now, we know this is kind of a military operation and this is somewhat staged. It looks like if they have to stay till Saturday or Sunday to get everything passed, they're probably going to at least have a vote this weekend. That's good. But I think Trump has all the cards.
Great analysis, and I agree on the final statement there. He holds all the cards. It's in some ways a trap, another trap that they're falling for. Dr. Scott, thanks for being here. Welcome to the broadcast. What's on your mind today?
Well, I mean, I look at this whole circumstance, and I'm very much on page with Captain and with Will, and I'm looking at this, and I kind of say, you know, so many people have said, you know, nothing's happening, and I go, bah humbug! Like, look at what has been going on in the background. Trump goes off, and I was asked the night that he was going to go on and do his broadcast, right? And he says, and I thought, well, he might mildly talk about the election, right? And then he could also go as far as go and say EBS, right? And he did almost to the EBS point. He basically punched everyone in the teeth who talked about election fraud issues, and he laid it out. And every single person who didn't broadcast it, which was what, ABC, NBC, and CBS, got a $25 million fine. But realize they have had many fines against them. And ever since that point in time, what happened? 10 days later, he put out more tweets and more posts than I had ever seen him before, and they were all Q posts. They were
Yes. How about that?
literally fascinating posts, and I put together a whole bunch of them and put them on YouTube, and just kind of put them together. It was just fascinating posts, and one of them was "Trust the Plan" and "Panic in DC." And so I'm going, guys, this is a military operation. And I keep saying, the military operation, you did too. And this is one of the reasons why I kind of was pushing to come on your stuff, because what you guys are talking about is the financial piece of this and the military piece of this. The key element is that we're seeing the financial situation completely disintegrate from the fiat point of here. At the same time, the election part of this, all the stupid people, the Democrat socialist of America, all the dummies are lining up here, and we're getting to see all the dumbest people in the history of the world show up on the stage. And like, I guess the Michigan guy that had painted eyebrows, he's been kicked off the stage. And so everyone that people get mad about, that is military operations, guys. And so the reality is, if they are going to delay the operation, totally fine with me. But what have we seen in the last few days? Plenty of EBS conversation. And what does EBS really do? EBS deletes the mainstream media. I'm like going,
Exactly.
yes, baby.
That's exactly right. Great opening. Thank you, gentlemen. Everyone's right on point. I want to follow up, Dr. Scott, on the Q post. To my producer, we've got two producers organizing this broadcast. Please request that link from Dr. Scott on the Q Plus compilation. I'd love to see that and share that out there. We'll add that to the how many times Trump said 17. We'll add it to that montage of videos as well, because that's been put together by somebody. And also, to your point about the EBS, ultimately what it does is it seizes control over the ability for the entire global network, if you will, to broadcast. And we take it over, and Guardian Daniel R. has laid that out from a very technical standpoint, which I read in the war reports. This being a global financial reset show, we're going to jump into the economic issues now. But as everyone just stated, it's a military operation, and one thing doesn't work without the other. It is a plan. Make no mistake about it. And Juan talks about the plan. I'm going to keep going back to Juan. I just so one last thing about Juan here. I've known Juan 7 years, on and off camera, multiple countries, multiple states, multiple settings. I can tell you, and of course the public knows this because all of a sudden he's shown his face, rather without, trying to hide from it. Kris Kringle, Miracle on 34th Street, but Juan looking good. But I can tell you, I'll use these terms. He might want to smack me down on this, but I would say he's being further activated with on his own and with in the entities he works with. There's been a change in Juan, and I think if the astute Juan observer will notice that. And if you don't, you'll see it in the broadcast that I just did with him. The gloves are off, folks. We're getting close to a major finale of one aspect of where we're at in this battle, and it's coming. Good, bad, and the ugly. But anyway, great episode with Juan. Let's run this clip to my producer and have our panel weigh in on what the president is discussing here as it relates to certain aspects of the economy.
I spoke with the chairman and CEO of Chevron, Mike Wirth, on Friday.
The story of the quarter is one of consistent execution, strong production, and record U.S. refinery throughput. We had assets around the world that ran at or near full capacity. We set a production record in the U.S. at nearly 2.1 million barrels of oil equivalent per day. We had record refinery throughput with runs greater than 1 million barrels a day, an all-time high here in the U.S., and several refineries set all-time records. All of that critically important at a time when the world energy system has been stressed and the need for supplies to markets and customers has never been higher.
One of the highlights, obviously, was much higher oil prices. And, Mike, that's because of this war in Iran. And I want to get your take on that, because the last time we spoke, there was serious worries about security, about ships transporting through the Strait of Hormuz.
Our production was up 20% year on year. 5% just since the first quarter to the second quarter. So we have been investing to grow production and bring energy to the market. The issues associated with the conflict in the Strait continue, and there are new developments each and every day. We now see not only the Strait of Hormuz, but the Red Sea and the Black Sea have risks and uncertainties. So some of the challenges have expanded, and the risks to supply are very real. We've seen demand in the world remain pretty strong, and China is perhaps the unexpected part of the story in that they've been able to reduce their crude purchases, which has taken a little bit of the pressure off the demand side of the equation as supply has had these challenges and these risks. And so inventories have been drawn down around the world, whether it's strategic stocks or commercial stocks, and the situation remains somewhat fragile and uncertain.
Well, has the Iran conflict permanently changed how you view geopolitical risk and energy security at this point?
I've been in this industry for 44 years. We've seen conflicts in the Middle East. We've seen conflicts in other parts of the world that have created issues for our industry. The industry responds in the short term with rerouting of supplies, and I think the industry's done well in this. The United States has been a big part of the story because as the biggest producer in the world, the biggest exporter now, to meet needs of our allies around the world, the U.S. has stepped up to be part of the answer here. Longer term, I think you will see some changes in the system. We are in discussions with Iraq about potentially entering one or two oil fields there, and part of those discussions would include a framework that would allow the construction of a pipeline that would go north and then move to the Mediterranean Sea and create a pathway for that production to get to market that would not have to go through the route today, which is through the Strait of Hormuz.
So, Mike, what can you tell us about infrastructure that has been hit as a result of this war? Is there any reason to believe that it's going to take longer and longer to get that infrastructure back in place?
Well, it depends on the particular circumstances. In some cases, the hits are relatively easily fixed if it's piping or tanks. In other instances, if it's more sophisticated processing equipment, that takes more sophisticated and specialized manufacturing to replace that equipment, and the lead times on replacing that can be months or even years in some cases. And so I think the unfortunate thing is that energy assets have been targeted in this conflict, and what that means is it degrades the capacity of the energy system to meet global demand, and how quickly that comes back will be one of the things that determines when markets actually get back to some sort of a new equilibrium.
But Mike, you've said that given this disruption, you would expect oil prices to remain elevated for some time, right?
We've seen supply constrained, we've seen damage to infrastructure, and we have new risks that I think will be priced into the market on shipping, for instance. So shipping rates, shipping insurance, and the willingness of ship owners to go to certain ports in the world is likely to remain a question for some time to come. Is there anything you think the administration or the Congress should be doing differently? I think the biggest thing that Congress could do is pass permitting reform. I think the one thing that I would mention is we've seen the administration take some actions that have been very helpful to markets. The Strategic Petroleum Reserve release has helped create supply. The waiver of the Jones Act has allowed us to move crude oil and products around the United States to markets where it's needed. There have been some specification relaxations, which creates more supply. And so the policy actions that have been taken are the right ones.
Good to see you. Mike Wirth, the Chairman and CEO at Chevron.
New risks priced into the market. That's an interesting answer. Will, we've been covering the Iran issue from the beginning rather well on this broadcast from the core angles that have been exposed to this. What do you make of this as things evolve regarding everything we just heard from the Chevron CEO concerning oil?
One of the things to keep in mind here is Chevron is posting the highest level of profits they've ever had in history over the last 2 quarters, which is taking in all of the Iranian situation. What's interesting about that is here in America, we had no disruptions, no supply chain problems, and yet we had elevated pricing all across the country. Donald Trump isn't very happy about this. He's making very public comments about it, about these companies gouging people in areas that are not problematic and are not at risk. So I agree with the president in that regard that they've made enough money. They needs to ease the pressure for the people. So Western Hemisphere's had no issues whatsoever. Obviously, as you get over to the Middle Eastern area, that becomes problematic. But it is surprising that we're pricing the whole world based upon one area of the world's issues, and probably unfair, but that tends to be the advantage that these companies take. They'll raise that price up very quickly, but it tends to be hooked to a parachute coming down. So it comes down very slowly. Is it right? Is it appropriate? Sounds like Donald Trump doesn't think so. And he actually called out Chevron specifically, and he called out ExxonMobil as well as those that have taken advantage of the people, particularly in the Western Hemisphere, where there is no supply chain disruptions whatsoever.
Thank you, Will. Captain Rob, any feedback on that?
Yeah, I think there's some legacy carryover from kind of the old world control points, choke points, Middle East, Strait of Hormuz. Now that you throw in Venezuela, all that new production is happening in Texas now, plus the unlock of formerly forbidden sites in the United States. New customers like Japan are going to want to start buying, and Asia are going to want to start buying oil from us. There's 0.0% doubt we're going to be the energy capital of the world and the exporter. Looks like Iraq is going to help us fill up the strategic petroleum reserve for some really, really cheap oil. So when you add all of these things together, I'm going to guess some of these CEOs aren't really reading the cue boards. They might not even be down with the fact that there's a military operation going on, so they're still using sort of legacy, blue blood, old school kind of metrics, and they don't realize how fast this table can flip over, and the Trump operation can change things overnight.
Yeah, it's so spot on about operating in the old legacy mindset. This is going to catch a lot of industries, a lot of individuals, and a lot of countries by surprise. They have no idea what's coming. Dr. Scott, your views?
Maria doesn't know how to ask the right questions either. The assumptions and the presumptions in her questions are rooted in 25 years in that seat, not on
Correct.
any of this stuff that you and I all have spent thousands of hours studying. They think we're probably knuckleheads,
Well, they can think all they want. I'm honored to have esteemed guests such as yourselves and the others contributors on our broadcast, and it's no surprise that we're getting 10 to 15 million collective views a month, because people have had enough of listening to a bunch of gibberish that has nothing to do with reality. So there's my 2 cents. Dr. Scott, you want to jump into the ring?
Well, you guys answered a couple of the questions here, but here's what he said too. China's demand is down, which I find it fascinating because here's the point. Iran actually supplies China dramatically, but he said China's demand for oil is down. Where are they getting their oil? They're getting it from us. Number two, Venezuela, ever since February, we started in Iran since March. Okay, so Venezuela has been influencing our oil reserves since February. So they've had 3 months, since February. So about, what would that be? About May, they've been pumping in the oil into us. Thirdly, we only get 10% of our oil from Iran. So how could we have boosted our prices? Now, I'm just going to talk about from Oklahoma, so we can just pick any state you want to, right? Our prices in Oklahoma were about 287, and then at the peak we were at 420. So how could, if we just had a 10% jump, just a 10% drop in price or 10% increase in price, how did we have a 60% increase in price? That doesn't make any sense. Therefore, we had a massive increase and their profits were going up. He also said in this statement that insurances would go up and there would be shipping rates going up. What he's telling you in the back end is this: what most people don't understand about the Strait of Hormuz is that it was done by the City of London. The City of London is the insurer of this area. And so basically it's the mafia. I want you to think about this. What you're actually doing is having Uncle Louie, who is the one that carries the bat, the insurer, to tell, so that you hope that he doesn't beat you up every single time you walk down the street. Okay, so if you're shipping oil from one portion of the Strait of Hormuz down the area, you're hoping that someone's not going to bomb you. So you pay this insurance carrier, which is the City of London, but no one understands that, which is called OPEC. You pay OPEC to get your shipping lane through. And so what Trump did is shut off this City of London issue. This is why we have money so incredibly high for energy, and he shut it all off. And then he's taken the tariffs and putting it into America. So this is the part that people are not understanding. What Worth is doing, and he is a BS artist, and so I'm being nice here. This is the problem, and he is exposing these people. And when we understand that Bretton Woods 1944 is all about putting the American dollar underneath the oil issue, this is wiping out the oil issue. This is the whole reason for Iran, other than, by the way, taking out Islam. The whole reason for doing this is to wipe out OPEC, to wipe out the whole situation for this. So we're going to see a complete restructuring of the oil situation, and it's going to come to the Western Hemisphere.
Great analysis. And as I said a moment ago, I really believe the oil industry, as well as the media and, politicians and countries, you can break this down in a lot of different ways. They're starting to see that, something's up here, and they're panicking. And because, again, back to Captain Rob's view, they're operating the old legacy mindset and system. And so you know what, folks, you and I can't do much about these particular things at this time. So enjoy the show, and beware Uncle Louie coming down the street. Hey, how you doing? Hey, forget about it. Go ahead, Will.
Just wanted to add one additional thing to this topic before we move on. Last year, Donald Trump put out an executive order to the Treasury to update all of their systems. That was in the end of March of 25. and he wanted all of this completed by the end of September. So September 30th, they did that. What does that mean? It means they have all new software and computerized system. They basically went blockchain compatible. This is allowing the Treasury to literally monitor everything everywhere. They're all of blockchain, all of the bank system, everything's being monitored. They know when Trump says they've made enough money, he knows exactly how much they've made. And he's not stating that number, but he knows. So what the reason for, and I like what Scott, what you had to say about the breaking of the oil cartel. They've used oil as a control mechanism to try to keep prices where they were and to prop up their fiat currency. Okay. Donald Trump is blowing that whole thing right out of the waters, rewiring the entire metrics of how oil is done. In fact, with the blow up of this entire system, you have oil being sold in whatever currency they want to sell it in. Saudi Arabia did not renew the agreement last summer. And so they're selling oil in whatever currency they want to sell it in. And what this is doing is it's breaking up that entire control grid that's been on oil, the very thing backing their money. And this is all strategic because their money system's going to come down. So first of all, we're reducing that asset layer and decoupling it from the economic system. Secondly, Donald Trump is trying to bring energy by creating additional outflows. He's done everything he can to open up the spigots here in America. They've sold all kinds of new oil leases. They've got drilling going on all over the place. He's trying to ramp up production. And it's not just oil. It's coal. It's fusion. It's going to be additional gas plants. He's trying to make energy so abundantly available that it's cheap, it's affordable, it's available to everybody. Why? Because the new quantum age that we're heading into requires massive amounts of energy. And Donald Trump wants to make sure there is no energy problem as we move into the quantum age, because we're going to push forward to be at the forefront of technological advancement.
And can I just throw something, and will probably know this better than anyone else, is that in July, I tracked over 8 different currencies. Specifically, I'm gonna have to pull this from just my head here. It was the lira, and obviously we have the dong, but we had the real, and so it's going to be over about 6 months period of time that were all basically tracked down to a zero number compared to the dollar. They went down so far that they're wiped out. And you're going, wait a second, how do currencies within a 6-month period of time, and they tanked by July? And you go, holy cow, how can you have currencies that were tracking along fine and then tank to a zero number compared to the dollar? That is tanking the rest of the currencies. That is the way that I believe the quantum financial system will do it, that will tank out the rest of the currencies so that we come into a new set of currencies, a global currency with that too.
Thank you, Rob.
Yeah, guys, both the great, incredible points here. Number one, the unlock is happening where there's going to be new reserves, new production capacity, less regulations. Trump in the last 2 weeks had gentlemen come in, he signed an executive order on data centers, and there were 4 companies that got bids. They're estimating with the $19 trillion in tariffs, the new shops that are setting up factories, production facilities, chip manufacturers, they're having to come and set up, they're hiring new jobs. They're also having to create their own energy. So there's an approximate, one estimate that I read is 40% of the energy that's going to be needed for these new factories, these new manufacturing jobs are going to be off ledger, if you will. 40% is going to be coming not through the old legacy power grid, the old monitored, 1940s and 50s legacy, put a meter on it, sequester Nikola Tesla's patents and his technology. They're going to be using fusion, miniature nuclear power generating, sources of energy that are not going to be coal, that are not going to be oil, that are not going to need, the traditional old school. So not only are we going to have an abundance of production, we're also going to have a reduction of demand, because these power centers, these AI centers, are going to require a tremendous amount of energy. And Trump wasn't letting them come in to set up shop and then strain our old grid and demand more energy and more water that was then just thrown onto the water tabs of me and you, Joe Citizen. So the dynamics here are lesser demand, rapid, abundant quantities of oil that have been held off the market by the OPEC cartel for price manipulation. And really, the OPEC cartel is purely an extension of the City of London. It's just a Ponzi scheme and a manipulation. But ultimately, there's going to be a complete disconnect of oil having anything to do with monetary policy. And an honest weights and measures, digital ledger technology, quantum financial system, oil is going to be a commodity like hay and corn and soybeans. It's not going to be related to currencies. It's not going to be related to the national debt. We're not going to be linking. So it's kind of like you can't pour old wine into a new sack. We're not going to be using oil with the cartel of OPEC and the mullahs and the choke points in the City of London being able to manipulate all of these variables and play the currency exchange games and weaponize the monetary system. We're root and branch separating anything having to do with energy with anything having to do with the monetary system. So hopefully that makes sense.
Oh, it makes a lot of sense. Excellent analysis. Folks, great changes is taking place 24 hours a day, 7 days a week right now. Please, it's very unbecoming for you to say nothing is happening. Let's move on and just take a look at the next clip here and see where it leads us to our producer, sir. All right, let's see. Well, what we've been talking about, President Trump published this on Truth Social. Manufacturing is booming. Factory activity just hit its fastest pace in more than 4 years, far exceeding expectations. New orders have expanded for 7 straight months. American manufacturing is back. Stock market just hit an all-time high. I believe it's over 54,000 on the Dow, and setting record after record because investors know America is winning. He goes on to speak about American exports are on fire and so forth and so on. So we're getting a health report from the president there in Truth Social that at least on the surface of what we see happening presently as part of the operation of great change and disruption that'll come later, we have a good health report right now. Will, what's your analysis of that?
Well, this is an interesting phenomenon. Of course, Trump is touting his policy as the reason this is happening. He has acquired $19 trillion of investment to come into the United States and be invested particularly in the manufacturing sector, new factories, new hardware. These are modern, up-to-date factories, not like the old stuff that we shipped off to China. This is going to be incredible from a production level. We have chip plants going on in Arizona right now. You have TSMC just announced another $100 billion for another 2 nanometer plant going in there for chips in Arizona. What does that mean? It means when all of those plants get done, that's 4 now for TSMC in Arizona, they will have more capacity, probably almost double than everything they have in Taiwan currently. So this is a massive input. Now, the other thing that's interesting to note is you look at economic input. This isn't $19 trillion printed by the Federal Reserve. This is $19 trillion that already existed in other countries and is now being brought back home. When you're not printing money, but you're bringing that much investment into the country, that's what allows inflation to stay down and massive expansion to take off. It's an incredible strategy. Of course, it can't continue to go on that for endless years, but right now it was certainly the right strategy to get us through the reboot of American ingenuity, manufacturing. We used to be at the top of the world in excellence of manufacturing. We're going to be there again.
I think Maria Bartiromo should have you three guests on her show. Thank you, Will. Rob, your input.
You know, we have states inside the United States that are equivalent to countries all around the world. You look at a New York, you look at a California, you look at a Florida, and you look at a Texas. I mean, as the ladies at Promethean Action like to talk about, they kneecapped the American system, and they financialized everything since 1971. As Scott Bissett said, you do not measure the health of a country by the checkout counter at Walmart. You do it by the entryway to the manufacturing factory, right? That's where health and wealth and jobs and manufacturing and trade, and we're reliant, and we get credit, and we give credit to people in the country, and we build the country from the inside out instead of buy it and outsource it. And then all of a sudden, when push comes to shove, and there's always going to be a crisis, now we're cut off from our supply, and we're not sovereign. We're dependent on others. So this whole financialization and gutting and hollowing out of America to get America all of its manufacturing for climate science and all the ridiculous stories they sold us to hollow us out, all of that's being reversed to bring back, to make a country what a country ought to be. Self-sufficient, with borders, with citizens, with laws, and in control of our own monetary system, our own currency. We can't be slaves to a one world currency NGO system on the Thames River. If we don't have borders, we don't have jobs, we don't have manufacturing, and we don't have control over our currency, we ain't a country, period. And Donald Trump is bringing all those absolutely essential elements of what it means to be a sovereign nation back to America, and he gets attacked viciously for doing the very things that are necessary to make a country great again.
You know, it's so interesting. What we really need to be, folks, is grateful. We need to be grateful right now. And first and foremost, that we're here at this incredible time in human history, watching the plan from God to Trump to the military to the White Hats to we the people unfold. We should be grateful for these great changes that are taking place as we go from tyranny to sovereignty, because that's what's happening, folks. Dr. Scott, care to weigh in on anything before I take us to another clip from the president?
Yeah, I mean, I guess I was thinking about manufacturing, and I kind of go to the car manufacturing. We've had so many of a lot of the car manufacturing. We've shipped a lot of that car manufacturing to Europe or to Mexico or wherever, and every time we do that, one of the things that I've spent a lot of time looking at is looking at state budgets. Did you know that 90%, 90 to 95% of the state budgets come from sales tax? And when people buy cars, that boosts up the sales. So, I mean, you're actually increasing the budget. So when he is bringing back manufacturing into America, we want to have those sales coming, or that manufacturing of cars into America. Right now, we are having a massive problem with car sales. First off, they're massively overwrought with the way that the average sales price of cars is sitting at $50,000, which is an unpurchasable number. So the car manufacturing, car sales is a big problem the way that they've been doing this. So they need to get their hiney spanked quite a bit. So that needs to get fixed in a lot of ways. But once we move through the fix of that circumstance and people are starting to have the ability to purchase cars again, that will boost state budgets quite a bit. And we see the sales tax of that going to Sales tax actually happens on 3 different levels. It's a county, city, and state, and that will help the budgets out of those areas. And so you're going to see a massive issue that comes in, and then you're still going to have tariffs that comes in. And that's the brilliance of Trump, is that the tariffs will fund the federal government, where the state governments are funded through the sales tax. And the last thing that I saw in there, if you notice that on the third paragraph, if you guys want to put it up there on screen, you can kind of see it. The third paragraph, he said something about fire. I find it fascinating, and I don't remember exactly the word, but he's okay. So he said American exports are on fire. And I'm like, wait a second. Why did he capitalize fire? He never does anything on accident. My thing right now is that we are having a massive issue with fire up in the Northwest. Now, I'm a massive conspiracy theorist. I look at fire issues and I don't look at them, and I'm seeing them up there. And one of my favorite guys is MJ Truth, who does beautiful kind of analysis. And we're seeing a lot of sick fire issues going on right now. And I just see that and I go, wait a second, something's going on. And so he might be looking at that. That's just me saying, wait, what's going on?
Well, great analysis, and I really that was some powerful points you raised about the sales tax and of course the ability for people to buy cars at these prices in their personal economies, and again the differentiation of how revenues are coming in from the various different sectors from the federal government with the tariffs and so forth. Great points. Go ahead, sir. Rob, you want to comment?
Yeah, I want to just make a point to just drive an exclamation point on Dr. Scott's point. I don't know if you've ever seen this, but to bring the viewer's memory, paint a picture here. Have you ever seen the pictures of what Detroit looked like after World War II and Nagasaki looked like? One was obliterated and one was one of the wealthiest cities in the world. And now it's completely opposite. Everything in Japan, Tokyo, Hyundai, Lexus, all the things that they make over there. And Detroit looks like a wasteland from a third world country because we eradicated the manufacturing base, the jobs, the wealth, the revenue, the sales tax, everything that comes from it by outsourcing manufacturing. And look what it did. That's example A of how to kill a country and how to make it great again and bring it back to health. That image.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wow. What a analogy there.
John, we didn't touch base on the last, Dr. Scott talked about this, but that last paragraph, Donald Trump talked about $200 billion of income. This is us manufacturing goods, selling them out of the country and bringing that kind of money in. And we've been running nearly 200 billion for the entirety of 2026 per month. It's a number we've never seen in a very long time in America, and it's just getting started. Can you imagine after we get all these factories online, what that number is going to look like? That's when we're going to start really seeing, I think, a reduction of taxation and a shift into the tariff realm. There's no reason that we can't balance our budget. In fact, if we just cut out half the fraud, we've balanced our budget. But and we're on our way with that too, because what these people don't know, every week they're talking about fraud cases they're fixing, and we post these all the time in our update shows that we do every week about the fraud. But what's interesting about that is I talked about the updates that the Treasury made. They have the most advanced computer systems they've ever had today. And if people think they're not tracking where all the money goes on every one of these federal payments, you're wrong. And there is cases being built, and there have been hundreds of situations that were shut down and people arrested. The CMS, Dr. Oz is over CMS, but CMS just announced the closure of over 1,000 hospice centers just in California alone totaling millions, tens of millions of dollars that was just going into nothing. There were no patients. There were no people there. It was all fraud. And so it's going to be amazing as we continue this work of, and Doge really started this, but as we continue all the work of cleaning up the fraud, and then as we increase the production output, Donald Trump has done something for the economic system of America that we've not seen in a very long time, whether it be the Monroe Doctrine that he seems to have brought back alive. Now we're calling it the Don Roe Doctrine after Donald Trump, and the issuance of the American system of economy, where we balance our budgets, we use tariffs to correct trade imbalances, and those revenues fund and take care of our country. The other thing that I think that we can't ignore is the fact that he's implemented a sovereign wealth fund to take all the assets of the country and put them into a place where they can be monetized for the benefit of the country. So all of these federal lands where they're issuing mining permits and oil drilling permits, whether it be Alaska or other places, there's millions of acres of federal lands, the 100 acres offshore all the way around the country. That all is now coming into the sovereign wealth fund. So Rob said it earlier about Trump rewiring the economic system. Oh yeah, this is not even close to the same thing that we had just 18 months ago.
Folks, what we're witnessing from a 40,000-foot view clearly is the dawning of the golden age. Patience, folks, patience. Let's take a look at another clip and see what it inspires in our panel. To our producer, put up the next clip, please.
For Chevron for the quarter, highest in history.
By 12 times.
On the back.
You saw that?
Yes. Yeah. I mean, it's unbelievable. On the back.
I don't like it.
Workers paying higher debts.
Yeah.
Whatever is our...
They're making too much money. Okay. Based on a shortage, they're making too much money. I don't like it. And I should be the last one to say, because I'm a big free enterprise guy. Nobody bigger. And, you know, you're going to see oil when we're finished with Iran. You're going to see the prices drop through the floor. But they made too much money. Too much money. Chevron, too much money. ExxonMobil, too much money. When you look at one company where they made 12 times what they made the year before, they're going to give some of that back to the public. And they better cut the retail price, the consumer price. Too much money. You're surprised I'm saying it? I'll say it loud and clear. I'm not happy about it. Go.
Well, there's our own Louis with a baseball bat. Thank you, Commander-in-Chief President Donald J. Trump, for telling it like it is. We'll go in reverse. We'll go to Dr. Scott, your viewpoints on what the president just said.
Well, I mean, and we're just to take our analogy just one step farther. Can you imagine what would happen? The very first number I can personally remember is gas being at 59 cents. That's just a number I remember. Okay, when I first started driving, and can you imagine what would happen to all prices of things when if you started seeing numbers of gas at 59 cents? We're just using my number. And so what would happen is everything starts coming down. When we start seeing that, you'd say houses, the average price of houses right now is about $300,000. So you'd say everything would start ripping down. You'd say the delivery of cars, the car payments of every single thing that you could possibly come up with, food, clothing, everything out there would just drop dramatically right there. And so he's almost intimating getting away from a fiat. Fiat currency actually increases prices because, as we've seen, inflation increases prices because when we have a fake money and it keeps going higher and higher, we've made more and more money. We've had the most amount of money in the history of our planet at $22 trillion, which is just a fake number that we can't possibly create. And we've never had that much money in the system. And so when we have that kind of money in the system with more than $175 trillion of debt, when you have that kind of imbalance of money and debt, you can't possibly do anything with it. But when you rip into a gold-backed currency, and which would instantly end the Fed, you'd say, wait a second, prices of all those cool things of gas, when it drops that way, everything changes. And so that's what he's actually saying, because you can't have a fiat currency and have gas prices go through the floor. So he's actually saying in code, no more fiat currency.
The rigged gig is up. Rob, any viewpoints there?
Yeah, I mean, here's one of the great lies, the intentional omissions in our education system since we've been born, and that is a debt-based system is never, ever, ever built to pay the debt off. It's a constant, infinite credit card to politicians, so the politicians can get their way. They play the kabuki theater. We argue over election over who's going to pay the debt off and who's going to balance the budget. And there's never been a plan. Inflation is built in to a monetary printing Ponzi scheme. By the time prices start to drop down, as Dr. Scott said, that is evident. That is the announcement to the world that the fiat system is dead, because a inflationary Ponzi scheme based on credit cannot survive deflation. It's like putting a car in reverse instead of forward. When you put it out of drive and you put the thing in reverse, the transmission falls out of a fiat-based Ponzi scheme, debt-only debt. They call it money. It's a Federal Reserve debt note. It's an IOU. It is not an asset. It's a liability. When the prices start coming down, their liability system dies on the vine.
My liabilities and own a bunch of bullion, gold, and silver. But your point is very well taken, sir. Will Barney take it from there? And then we're going to run one more clip from Breitbart. Actually, I'll read a bit on that. And then we'll go into the second hour now we've just dipped into, and we're going to change gears, listen to Juan, and have the panel weigh in on the RV and the Sargassar. But any closing comments, Will?
Just a couple. Donald Trump talked about a couple things. They made too much money. He said 12 times. I mentioned earlier, he knows what they've made. Okay, that this isn't a mystery. He says they're going to give it back to the American people, and they're going to lower retail prices. Well, how are they going to give it back? You're going to have to watch this play out, but don't be surprised if somehow Chevron's funding a new pipeline or some other thing, because with the Keystone Pipeline is back online, who's paying for that? There's going to be something happen where Chevron's making a capital investment into the country. Just watch how that plays out. You will see something along those lines. Donald Trump is a deal maker. He's going to say, look, either hand us the cash or you're going to make an investment. You're going to do a deal for us. And he'll get the deal he wants. Obviously, he's just called them out. He's blown their whole scheme wide open, right? 12 times what they made the same quarter a year earlier.
Unbelievable.
That's not a small amount of money. This is insane, and it's going to be watch how this epically plays out. And the cool thing is we talked about asset currency. We're going to get, when the Treasury begins to issue their own asset currency, what's going to back that currency? Well, it's going to be backed by the sovereign wealth fund that's holding all these assets of the country. And what's part of those assets? It's oil. It's gold, it's silver. There's probably 12 different things that are being backed by this, right? It's not just one simple thing, but it is real assets. And it's going to be amazing as we step into that world, because the moment we do that, inflation's done. There doesn't have to be inflation. In fact, we could have deflation. And what happens with deflation is the value of that currency actually increases. Why? Because the assets that are sitting in that fund are increasing in value over time. They're producing more income. They're doing other things. So it's going to be interesting. The U.S. debt clock is predicting that over the next 5 to 10 years, there could be a 25% increase in that new currency that's issued, not a decrease. What an amazing thing that'll be for the American people.
Absolutely. You know, I think of Uncle Louie again with the baseball bat. We've got Donald Trump with a velvet sledgehammer taking care of business on behalf of the American people and also setting the world on a course correction that is very much needed in spite of their ignorance and arrogance and greedy agendas. I'm finished with my little rant. Rob, something you should care to share with us?
Yeah, well, I wanted to drive this point home too. Donald Trump stands on the moral high ground when he says, I'm offended. This is grotesque. 12 times the earning, 12 times the profit off of public infrastructure. That oil is the resources of the sovereign people. It should not be corporatized and profited and price gouged. Truth is a protocol. Gold is a protocol. Land's a protocol. The the TCP IP is a protocol that the internet works on. The XRP ledger and interledger protocol, this whole DLT structure, that's sovereign protocol for humanity. That's not something for someone to weaponize against us or to jack up their profits 12x. So, from a standpoint of corporatizing oil in this UCC world, instead of being good stewards of a natural resource, where when we're in a war, we're in a political war, a spiritual war, an economic war, a kinetic war, we're in the Strait of Hormuz, we're trying to take the head off of the City of London beast system. And while we're doing this, Chevron's making 12x the money while everybody can barely put food on the table. I'd be pissed off too if I was president of the United States.
What a great perspective. Thanks for sharing that with us, Rob. Dr. Scott, you care to weigh in? And we're going to move on right after Dr. Scott to our producer. We're going to bypass the next script, if you will, and we'll be moving on to the 107 Zoom. But before we do, Dr. Scott, you care to weigh in?
No, I mean, I just think you guys are just dead on. I can't add anything more to that. That's perfect.
Well, there you have it. All right. Well, thank you. Let me set this up again, folks. I'm in northern Thailand, as our loyal followers know, and Juan, as we all know, sort of navigates the continents and happens to be over here in my neck of the woods. So I sat down with Juan over the weekend in Bangkok and then followed up. Since we're on the same time zone, it was easy for us to coordinate a broadcast. I didn't have a producer available the hours Juan and I did it. So it's on Zoom, but very well done. 3 hours. We unpacked a lot of key issues. There were 5 very specific top of the mind issues that we raised. And I encourage our viewers to make sure you get that broadcast in the next 24 hours and watch it from start to finish. We're going to listen to an excerpt, a small excerpt, maybe 10 minutes of 3 hours, where we were discussing the RV, specifically the dinar and the dong and the zim and so forth, as well as aspects of Nasara Gasara. So if our producer is ready, let's and don't nobody go nowhere. Stay right here and listen to this episode clip from 107, and we'll have our panel weigh in on it. Hey, we've got 107 coming back in. I'll interrupt myself. Juan, when you're ready, just say hello, and we'll pick up where we left off. Juan is in Bangkok and heading to another country very soon. He's changed locations. I recognize it all, as I was just there recently. Juan, are you with me?
Yeah, I am.
Okay. I know you might abruptly need to end this broadcast. So before that potentially happens, I want to move us into an area that you have discussed with me 2 and 3 years ago, on and off camera. And I'm sure it's been raised throughout the podcast that you're lending your time to. But now that I have you here, and I just got a text from some very important people that are in my circle, and I'm glad they did that, because I want to raise this question. All right, Nasara Gasara. I know it's like, beating the dead pony, but it's important because we're encroaching upon new phases of economic change, with the Federal Reserve partially being moved into the Treasury, with the president talking about potentially no need for federal income tax down the line, and a lot of narratives out there. Elon Musk's high universal income, and everything in between. But Nasara Gasara, I have a copy of the 100-page bill and all that noise in there. In my opinion, and I'll turn it over to you, Juan, to boldly put it in place on the record that I can share with everyone to put the issue to bed. In my opinion, certain aspects of Nasara Gasara are unfolding, and certain things we seemingly are going to unfold. But the entire Nasara Gasara, you've been well on the record saying, and the RV, which is the revaluation of the dinar, the zim, and the dong, and others. Clarify all of that for our viewers. Of course, there's going to be a revaluation of currencies. After all, look what's happening with the dollar, and we don't have time to get into that right now. But is everyone going to become a millionaire overnight with their dinar, their zim, and so forth? And Nasara Gasara, are some elements true and some elements not true? Please break it down for us. I know you've done this before, but we've got a new audience, and we've got a raised awareness and a lot of division in the podcaster space on this very subject. Can you help us out, sir?
The Gasara Nasara, as advertised, including the dinar and all the other zim bonds and everything else, was the other team's plan. Had Hillary won, they would have already collapsed the dollar and moved us into this other way of monetization, of holding our wealth, of converting our life energy, minutes, days, hours of our life that we work and get script for, moving our life energy into a medium of trade, which was these reserve notes, Federal Reserve notes. And by the way, with all of their wonky occult imagery all through the dollar bill and prophetic stuff, even the Twin Towers being showed, if you fold the bills right and all that other, it's quite bizarre. We're not going to be run by this globalista here within our country, and we're taking that back. That's why I say honest money. They're a half a footstep behind honest elections, and it was hijacked through fraud. The people who participated in hijacking control of our currency here in America, in collusion with literally demons, Luciferians in nature, and specifically as those various orders exist. We're moving away from that, but for a period of time they'll run concurrently. There are aspects of the things that are going to happen which some people could interpret as an implementation of Gasara Nasara, but not completely so. It's just like within the senior executive service operations for continuity in government between elected administrations, which is what their authorities are that they work under, their mission statement. The reality is the superseding organization that actually handles continuity in government and had pre-existing authorities which have not been overturned, even though they tried to usurp them, is NORAD, which is what the president is operating in and through, and reestablishing constitutional government here in America. And the Constitution says that the Treasury will mint gold and silver coin, and that is the currency that is used for all debts, public and private. Not this reserve currency, which is based on a bankrupt and a bankruptcy operation against America. So the Zimbon, the dinar. That's somebody else's rules. In fact, it's like saying, we're going to play football today. Oh, okay. Well, what kind of football? Are we playing NFL type football or college football? You know, the rules are close, but they are different. Are we playing flag football or tag, like we might do in junior high or high school? Are we, because we don't want to kill off players, are we playing European football? Is it rugby or is it soccer? They all call those football. The rules vary in all of them. And the players that have the whole Gasara, Nasara, Zimbond, Dinar thing in their sights are saying that by international law, these promises made by treasonous traitors within the intelligence system, primarily in the US case CIA, in collusion with other intelligence agencies, did these deals into Iraq and other countries. And at the time they did it, they promised that they were going to pay back, according to certain rules, all of those monies. Okay. Well, it was done through fraud against the American people. And it was done based on somebody else's rules within the international reserve currency systems. Does that obligate the Treasury? Does it obligate the U.S. to those frauds? No. In fact, let them pay it all off. What they've done is they've put in place, beyond even the dinar and everything else, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that are already printed, that are valid Federal Reserve notes, that actually have numbers that are ready to go, what we call on ledger. In other words, within the internationally recorded paper currency in circulation around the world. So they have a system ready to go with money pre-printed, which was intended to flood countries around the world. Remember, the dollar is traded all over the world, even to the exclusion of the local currencies as being good as gold. So within the Federal Reserve and the International Reserve System, trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars were printed, pallets and pallets. You have no idea. A pallet has 100 million on it. They have half pallets and stuff like that, but a full pallet's $100 million. So 10 pallets is a billion. Okay. They have trillions and trillions and trillions printed and sitting in countries all over the world, that the plan was to flood the markets all over the world with those dollars, break the confidence in the dollar with that, not through the banks, but on the black market where nobody wanted a dollar. And then to force the world, because of this attack, counterfeiting, which wasn't counterfeit, the world's going to have to go to a digital currency, starting with the U.S. And they had a plan to go to a digital currency and to throttle that coming in. Now, okay, you want to, look, supply and demand. If suddenly all these people holding dinar and zimbonds are gatrillionaires, they're all going to fly their own 747. They're all buying a 50,000 acre ranch. They all have a plan. The plan was you have to have some kind of a charitable operation, and 90% of the money has to go save babies, help veterans, feed the population. They all have great stuff. You race to the bank at the appointed hour when somebody, gives the magic go code. And then if you get there in time, you're somehow going to be able to get monetized your thing. If all your paperwork's correct, you're going to get deposits in your account, and you're going to be able to go out and do that. The reality is, if you suddenly flood the market with all of this digital currency at the same time over a period of a day or two, now supply and demand, the price of a 747 will go from 50 million to 5 billion. Why? Because there's only so many 747s. And then even if you get your 747, what's the cost to maintain it? And if everybody's got all this money being thrown at them, who's going to be around to want to work to maintain it? it's not realistic in the way the world actually works. So what happens is you got conned.
All right, there you have it, 107. We'll start at the top of the panel. Your comments and feedback, Will Barney.
Very interesting comments from Juan. Now, one of the things that I think we have to keep in mind is think about all these various currencies that people may have acquired. I don't care if it's dinar, dong, Venezuelan bolivar. It's all fiat, every bit of it. If you're going to switch over to a asset-backed currency, what value are they going to give you for that? Is it really going to be an increased value? I've never been told a number that we would be given. Okay, so I can't quote any number. That there's stories going around of various numbers. Oh, you'll get $2 per, Vietnamese dong or some crazy thing. But if it's fiat and you're exchanging it for asset-backed currency, how does that make sense? That you would get a higher number. So I think Juan is onto something here. Now, I will tell you this. I had a conversation with a representative of one of these families that have this kind of wealth that they could make the world better. Do you know what their number one concern is? That if money is released too quickly, even into projects, that it could disrupt entire industries in any one particular area. And now you create a false economy in that particular area. Like, let's say it's the dairy industry, and you're going to put a bunch of money into cattle and milking cows. If you throw billions of dollars into one industry, now suddenly that's affecting everything else. The price of cows goes up. The price of milk goes. You now have an inflated artificial market that's developed. They're not interested in that. They have no desire to do that. What they want to do is they say, let's not break what's working. Let's add to it and enhance that to make the world a better place. So I think the ultimate solution there, even on the project front, is that there's going to be some ability to do projects one after another and build that gradually over time so as not to disrupt the world and break the whole system. I don't think that that's going to make much sense to do that. But ultimately, we don't have a future if we don't get to sound money, asset-backed money, and we first need to have sovereign country that where the government's elected by the people, and then we can build upon that. So that's why I talked about that in the opening section. Is I think there is a process to what we're going through right now across the whole world, and I'm talking to people in probably 5 different continents. Every country has the same identical problems. And it's this: our politicians are corrupt. We're taxed into the ground. Our money's worthless. Real estate is too expensive. We can't afford to live. I don't know if I'll make it 4 weeks. Pick your country. Everybody has the same identical problems because this economic system that the cabal has created is just squeezing everyone. The inflation is causing the value to crumble of the dollar. Thus, the expenses don't go down, they go up. I don't see people's salaries and other economies going up and on top of that. So when Juan talks about it's con, everybody's been conned on the whole thing. He's not wrong. You need to look at this realistically. I don't think he's wrong on that front. I don't always agree with everything Juan says, but there's some components to this that I'm with him on, because it doesn't make sense that you would make everybody a multi-millionaire or billionaire. They're going to go out, spend money like crazy. You're going to have this lottery syndrome kick into everybody. And that doesn't really help the economy. It doesn't really help industry itself if people just abandon their jobs and they go to this. So I think there has to be a reasonable way that we build on a foundation of sovereignty, get a sound money system that's not corrupted, that is clean, that is transparent, and then we start to rebuild our society, doing good and worthy projects that are helping to build from there.
Thank you, Will, for weighing in on that and some good points there. Captain Rob, do you care to comment on what we just listened to from 107?
Yeah, I think the parallel point that he's trying to make here is let's go back 8 years ago. Let's go back to the election. Nobody thought Trump was going to win. Then let's go back to waking America up and explaining to everybody how badly we've been lied to. Let's look at all of the political corruption that we've talked about, the fake money that we've talked about, the Rothschilds that we've talked about, the fake medicine, the fake elections. Pick your favorite fake news, right? He came down the escalator and picked a fight with fake news. The very first thing he did on the day he announced his presidency, he started punching fake news because the power of death and life comes from the tongue. You got 4 corporations that can control propaganda and lie to the people 24/7. That's probably your biggest enemy to waking people up. Now let's transition to COVID. Had Trump tried to tell everybody, "Oh, this is a conspiracy, guys. The bankers are in with the media people and the pharmaceutical companies and the World Health Organization. They're really they planted this thing. They're trying to kill you all. Don't take the shot." They'd have carried him off in a paddy wagon. He'd have never had another day in political life if he had gone too fast with truth. Now let's go to the economy. How do we get rid of counterfeit system? How do we go to asset-backed currencies? How do we digitize things from, and the Bible talks about render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. Well, this Caesar, the world we've been living in, has been the city of London, the Rothschilds. Now we're coming back to 207 sovereign Caesars, if you will, meaning sound money from sovereign nations, sovereign currencies, backed 1-to-1. And we have to make a transition. We can't go at Mach 7. We can't do this over a weekend. We can't just say, okay, everybody, here's all your back taxes. Here's all of, the money that they've stolen from you, adjusted for inflation. You're all billionaires. That would create more chaos than anything. We have to render or reconcile from a fraud system to an honest money system. And it can happen we're talking 18 months, 2 years. I ran an analysis yesterday that talked about by 2030, which is 2.5 years from now, with real world assets, 207 stable coins, which is the law of the Genius Act. And everyone that wants to have a stable coin has to have a 1-to-1, 100% backing of a real asset, 93-day or less treasury bond behind every issued dollar. That Genius Act standard is going to apply across the world. Okay? If you have 207 stable coins from 207 countries, 10 million AI bots, 24/7 trading, machine to machine, person to person, automatic hedging, derivatives, yield, settlement, all of these transactions moving value with all these new business models. By 2030, we could have a 40x larger amount of value, the velocity of money and value that begins to trade around the world than what we have right now today. 40x. You've heard people like Larry Fink and Bank of America and all the big players about how fast they are going to go towards tokenization. Tokenization is just a fancy name for a digital representation of something of actual value. Car, oil, bond, gold, silver, stock, home equity, antique car, derivative, whatever. Okay. But we're going to a sound, honest money system where there's going to be 1-to-1 collateral backing everything that's issued. And these ledgers these governments are going to have to load their currency into this system, their new sovereign currency, where in theory, and I believe in reality, a 20 is going to equal a 20 is going to equal a 20 is going to equal a 20 in 207 nations. If the rules are the same, if there's real world assets and there's one-to-one backing, you cannot have inflation because you can't just arbitrarily increase the money supply unless there's actual value that goes along with that. That's called growth, not inflation. If America doubles its GDP and can issue twice as much stable coins based on the Genius Act, and there's twice as much collateral at BNY Mellon or in the Treasury, wherever they hold it, just because the supply of money goes up to, doubles, that's not inflationary, that's called growth. So if we will maintain this level of discipline with accountability and inspectability, where everybody in the world has to, instead of trust me, it's going to be show me. We're going from a world of institutional trust to verifiable collateral. When we can get there, all the funny money, all the fake money, all the printing presses, the currency printing presses that were sent overseas to print all of these units of these fake Federal Reserve notes or dinars or zims or whatever that aren't actually legally registered in the database in the system will not be recognized as valid. They'll just be collector's items. So it is going to take time. It's going to, 2.5, 3, 4, 5 years to transition away from, again, you can't pour old wine into a new sack. The digital ledger technology blockchain system is the new sack. We can't pull all this other crap and throw it in there and expect it to work under the terms of the Clarity Act or the terms of the Genius Act, or, as I said in the early part of the show, Vladimir Putin didn't just sign the Digital Currency Clarity Act in Russia, and now all of a sudden he's going to let Rothschild fiat dollars come flowing back through Russia. That's not happening. That's not going to be allowed. So I believe what we'll see is, again, ISO standards, Genius Act standards, Clarity Act standards that are going to be universally applied. We're going to have that level playing field, and the world of fiat is going to just go away.
Institutional trust versus verifiable money. Very important. It says a whole lot. Thank you, Rob. Scott, do you want to weigh in on this?
Yeah, so I mean, I definitely agree with a lot of what you're saying here. I know one has had opposite viewpoints on this, and I'm sure you guys get some of these kind of things, and I get the common statement. One thinks that Nassar is a scam, and it's probably the number one comment that I get all the time, and people want they hear this thing, and I go, first off, I started looking at the Nassara piece, and if you think Nassara is just a monetary issue, you haven't listened to the whole thing. When I started looking at this, I looked at the monetary issue, but I didn't stop there. There's a military piece of it. There is an election piece of it. There's a voting piece of it. There is the Fed piece of it. There is an IRS piece of it. Okay. And so, and by the way, there is a humanitarian piece of it. And there is a piece of a government part, right? And there's a piece of the military. I mean, there's a piece of the media. Once you start understanding that thing, that's why I had to expand to all those areas, right? And I had to awaken to all those areas. And we've talked a little bit about that. one of the things that I wanted to sit with Juan, and I remember he was and I just caught him in between an airplane flight with him, and I asked him these one questions. I asked him, I said, "Do you believe that?" I said, "I love your conversations. Trust me, I sit, I sit at rapt attention. Sometimes he goes on and on when he goes and talks, right? And I can too, but he tends to piece together, like streams of consciousness, right? And it's pretty funny when he does that. And and I said, I love your election issues and your election fraud stuff that you fight on and your voter fraud issues. But do you believe in end the Fed? And he said, yes. Do you believe in end the IRS? Yes. I said, thank you very much. That's all I wanted to know. And gold backed currency. Yes, I agree with that. Those are the focus of what we're talking about here. So and that's really the areas that we need to deal with. By the way, if you some of the areas we've had some people when they get into this, they start expanding and they start talking about straw man. And there are people that will talk about straw man and say, you know what, I want to get all of the things that are fair to me, right? They say, I want to get all the taxes back to me, so all the way back to 1933, or pick the date that they want to get, right? And all the taxes that I've ever had back to me. Or I want to have all the interest paid back to me, all the debts and all the interest paid back to me. I want to have all the fraud paid back to me. And I say, well, guess what? That's never going to happen. I mean, the debts, yes, we can talk about that from a whole bunch of different levels because, I can use the 14th Amendment under the fourth section. It indicates, the fraud level of debt. And so we can get into that conversation in a deeper level, but that's not one thing that happens. But paying you back for all the unfairness that happens, guess what? I always say, God is a just God, but he's never fair. And, there's no way to make everything fair to you. And so if you did drop in, and I always kind of say, if you want $5 million, if we dropped in $5 million to every single person in America, what would happen? It's this thing called price inflation. And that's exactly what Juan is talking about. It's talking about price inflation, which means that Grandma Jane would walk into a dealership and she wants to buy that $50,000 Honda Accord. That Honda Accord would instantly be $500,000 because supply and demand would know that there's only 4 Honda Accords or 20 Honda Accords on that dealership. And that guy goes, I'm not selling it for $50,000. I can't afford to sell it for $50,000. It's going to be $500,000. And I know dang well she has at least $500,000 or $5 million in the bank. And so I don't have to sell it for that amount of money. And so that's what price inflation would happen if we did that. So that's what happens if everyone got a massive UBI, and that's what lottery winnings do here. But let's kind of push back on this point. If we were also going to see all of these billionaires and trillionaires, by the way, there are trillionaires. Nancy Pelosi is one of those trillionaires. These are people that are going to be exiting the planet, and all of their wealth is going to be forfeited in many ways. So we're going to see all their wealth floating away into nowhere land. And so I do believe in the RV, but I would say the RV is if you look into it, it is an incredible tiny group of people. And it is a very tiny situation. It is not going to be happening to a huge amount of people. And I don't want to get into it too huge amount, but I think that some of what he talks about, I disagree with how he says it. I think that he's making some logic leaps in there. And that's how I'll kind of leave it in that one point there.
Well, thank you very much. And there's enough common ground amongst us here on this panel, hook, line, and sinker with what Juan had spoken about, and then some varying viewpoints of disagreement, which is good and healthy. I'm going to speak with Juan, send him a text perhaps in a couple of days, and see if he'd entertain coming on and discussing this with us all, and see what else we can further extrapolate on this very subject. But I thank everybody for weighing in. To my producer, I want to read something. You just sparked something, Dr. Scott, that I'd like to comment on. And so to my producer, if you can go to our website, jmcbroadcasting.com, go to contribute. Thank you very much. There it is. Guardian Daniel R., all of my resources are published. They're published at jmcbroadcasting.com. You click on, and to my producer, scroll around a little bit on the contributors tab, and then we'll park it at Guardian Daniel. I'll go to 107 up top. Okay, scroll through. You got Juan. Just move through it quickly. You've got Ricardo Bosi. You've got, let's stop it right there. You've got Blaine Holt. All our contributors, including Will Barney and Captain Rob and many others, are featured there. And then we have a tab for the healthcare contributors. These are my resources. In addition to what I've known for 3 decades and the rabbit holes I go down. But these are my resources. Now, there's only one resource that remains somewhat anonymous, and that is Guardian Daniel R. And I've discussed that in my premiere episode of Fireside Chats with JMC. Encourage you to go listen to that out of the scope of today's broadcast, so I'm not going to go there. But I do want to read this. Again, Scott Young just sparked this in me about debt forgiveness and so forth. I asked Guardian Daniel R to clarify for me and differentiate for me, because the narrative, there's a lot of narratives out there. The narrative of wealth repatriation from the birth certificate issue, that wealth is coming back to us. And we've broadcast that and that's been talked about for, I don't know, a dozen years by lots of folks, including us here at JMC Broadcasting. I dug a little deeper, got 3 sources to confirm, and I'm going to read to you something for you to make your own decisions. The statement is, we will not be receiving any wealth repatriation from the birth certificate issue. However, we will be receiving wealth repatriation, if we want to use that term, for the stolen, fraudulent taxes and other related issues. Let's put the split screen with Daniel R up there. I'm going to read this. It'll take maybe a minute. The difference lies, this is important, folks. We're differentiating of why are we getting tax money, stolen tax money back, and why are we not getting that back on the birth certificate. Here we go. I'll be looking at a computer here. Pardon me. This is off the cuff. The difference lies in the legitimacy of ownership and the nature of how the funds were generated within the old system's software. Here is a short logical explanation of why one is liquidated while the other one can be refunded. Okay, we're talking about the illegal tax money coming back, which is probably part of Nasara Gassara. Number one, the substance of that is taxes, like income tax, are real assets that were unlawfully stripped away from you as a living person, taken directly from your actual labor and your real income in daily life. Okay, pretty clear. Now, the QFS principle regarding that, because these funds represent your true self-earned property, they carry a clear human energy signature. The quantum financial system, the QFS, can trace this theft with absolute precision through historical banking logs. It mirrors these amounts back onto your new sovereign account as a lawful restitution of assets, because the living individual is the rightful owner of that hard work. Now, we go and we talk about straw man, which is what Dr. Young sparked in me here. So here we go. Straw man accounts, or the birth certificate refunds. Let's discuss the substance of that. The $1 million values on the hidden strawman accounts trusts were generated by the criminal cartel through the securitization of your birth certificate on commercial trading floors. And I think our audience understands that. We covered that in great detail in the past. Now, the QFS principle, this money, strawman, birth certificate, this money was created utilizing a fictional legal entity, the person, in all caps, within maritime commercial law, UCC. It represents pure, unbacked fiat debt money out of the printing presses of the central banking fraud. But since these funds never rested upon real human labor, but were a mere projection of the corrupt corporate matrix, they carry no valid asset-backed signature. The QFS completely deletes these fictional accounts and book entries during the G7 bankruptcy instead of absorbing them. So, last sentence in summary, taxes were the theft of your real money, your life's energy, your labor, your work. Taxes were the theft of your real money, which will be refunded. So let's rejoice in that, will be refunded. Strawman accounts were invented money created by a system under your name, which will be deleted. Let's go back to the full panel. Thank you very much for giving me the chance to read that to you all. I'm very curious as to the panel's commentary and analysis of what I've just read, compliments of Guardian Daniel R., which I had verified with Juan O'Savin and Ricardo Bossi, and they concur. Will, Barney, your views?
I agree with what Daniel R. is saying here. What I was hearing is that we would get restitution for what was taken from us. So that is the tax money. I have never heard any confirmations whatsoever on birth certificate issues that would be coming from anywhere. So I would have to say, from my information, I would say Daniel's spot on with that assessment.
Thank you. Quick comment, and we'll go to Rob and Scott. Folks, don't throw rocks at anybody. Don't throw rocks at me or this panel or at Juan or anybody. Darts at the dartboard. Everyone is seeking the truth. And none of us have a direct seat at the Q Plus meetings, to use that analogy. While some of our contributors and guests have good access that perhaps others don't, and have done enough homework and research, all of us are doing the best we can to bring the truth as we know it to be to the surface, because where we go one, we go all. I've been on the record myself. I've been under the idea that we would get that money back. It made sense to me until it didn't. And this report clarifies it for me. And we're just setting the record straight. And again, you know what, folks? We'll see how it all plays out in the end. Captain Rob, do you care to comment on this very important subject?
Yeah, I love your context, John. It's none of us have a seat at the Q Plus table, but every single one of us has a seat at the discernment table. Mm-hmm. And discernment is a skill. It's a gift from God. It's an ability to look at information and look at data and discern truth and work to the best of our ability to use our best judgment. Doesn't mean we're right. It also doesn't mean every decision that Donald Trump ever makes will be flawless and unimpeachable and we can't no man is human. We all fall short. No team is perfect. One does have the power to make law, but we shouldn't stop trying to use discernment because we don't have a Q Plus tag around our neck and we don't get to sit in those meetings, right? We're more right than wrong. I can promise you that. And, it does make sense that, on a one-to-one basis, we should get back every penny they stole from us illegally. Fraud vitiates everything. And we know exactly how much they took. Anybody that's ever gotten a statement from Social Security, they have down to the penny how much you've made or reported every single year and how much taxes, they took from you every single year, and exactly how much money their stupid formula will give you if you start collecting at 62, 3, 4, 5, 6, whatever age, we know how much they've stolen from us. I don't know that there's any records or any way that they created this Ponzi scheme in the second room, in the underground where they were doing the underground boxing and chicken fights, and the third room was the birth certificate bond trading. It'd be impossible to unwind that. I think it would be now using that money and printing money out of thin air did debase the purchasing power and the wealth that we could have had they not inflated and made our 98, 97% of our purchasing power and value of our dollar go to zero. I don't think we're not going to get an inflation adjusted. Maybe we will, but I don't think we're going to even get an inflation adjusted retribution of the money they stole from us from taxes. And if they tried to do both, inflation adjusted return and birth certificate bond calculation, we would have the very problem that we've talked about here. Everybody would have so much money, it would drive up inflation. Nobody would want to go to work, and it would just create a hot mess. So it doesn't make any sense to try to, give everybody $10 million and hope the economy doesn't have side effects, because it would.
You raised an interesting point. I agree with you, everything you just stated, particularly the latter comment. But going back to something you said just a second ago, inflation adjusted on the stolen tax money, that'd be something, if they could figure that out, depending on what that number would adjust up to, boy, that would be wonderful. But it could bump up against what you're talking about here, having way too much money and so forth. But listen, folks, just to keep it simple, Sam, and again, we'll see how it all plays out. But Scott Bessent, President Trump, Dan Scavino, Elon Musk, and others have certainly given us enough crumbs to understand that the IRS and the Fed is over as we know it, and thank God for that. And I firmly go ahead.
Well, I wanted to add one other element I think we need to throw into this from a context standpoint. Scott said a month ago or 3 weeks ago, he's in the process of monetizing or standing up the sovereign wealth fund. President Trump signed another executive order. He said within 12 months, this will be stood up. My guesstimations are anywhere between 300 to 400 trillion dollars is the amount of wealth that's going to go in that sovereign wealth fund. And when you start looking at, if those are assets of America, we the people are the asset rightful beneficiaries. I did a calculation that said if the sovereign wealth fund just was able to generate a 5% return on $400 trillion, that'd be about $90,000 a year for every adult 18 years or older in the United States. So if you get your money back from stolen taxes and a big sovereign wealth fund check, and then you start figuring out where you want to go to work, you're probably going to be okay.
Yeah, that's a good problem to have. We're going to Dr. Scott, and we're going to conclude the program with you three gentlemen, as long as we don't talk over each other. Speak what's on your mind about anything, certainly the subject matter we're on, as we wrap up this broadcast. But Dr. Scott, what's your view of what I just shared with the world here from Guardian Daniel R.?
I 100% agree. When we talk about, the straw man conversation, I always kind of say it like this. Listen, if you have like $100,000 life insurance policy and you cancel it, do you ever get that money back? The answer is no. So it's just very, very simple. That $100,000 life insurance policy, if you die tomorrow, your wife can go get it. It's hers, right? But as soon as she cancels it 5 days before you die, you never get it, right? So that's how it works, right? It is a fictional point of money that you paid into, but if you don't die, you don't get it. Okay, so that's just a basic, easy way for people to think about. Okay, that's what they did, and that's actually the reason why they set it up. It's part of the Ponzi scheme of the electorate system. The very first person that actually utilized it officially is Lyndon B. Johnson in 1948. So it's part of how they do it. So, by the way, I'm going to give you a really interesting point. My father-in-law died in 2024, right? And I'm watching his money, right? So Social Security, he dies. He dies in February, right? And so in March, as soon as the death certificate shows up in March, they claw back his Social Security out of his account. And I'm watching it. I'm going, how do you claw back his money? You don't even give us like a month's notice. And they clawed back everything from February. But here's the thing. When we tried to go cancel his driver's license, it was an act of Congress to go kill off his driver's license, to go kill off his voter registration was another act of Congress. And this is in a very red state of Oklahoma. I mean, we had to show his all of the registration forms, all of his death certificates over and over again. Now, here's the thing. He was a veteran, and and Social Security. They know the instant he died to take away his Social Security and his VA benefits. Think about that one for just a second. They ripped away those kinds of things, but they don't want to take away his voter registration and his driver's license. Why? Because they were going to use it to vote Democrat for the rest of his life. That gives you an answer of that straw man kind of thing. And so that's that little fictional stuff that goes out there. Those are going to be canceled. So that's why we always kind of understand that part. The tax issue, I would say, listen, I've heard people talk about that we're going to get all of our taxes back. I'm not one of those people that would look at that and see. This is where I'm going to make a judgment statement, like I believe Juan is making judgment statements too. Here's what I worry about. Let's make it a conversational point. If most people pay around $10,000 in taxes, and I'm just making up a conversational point, and if we work long enough, what would happen if we dropped $150,000 or $200,000 on a whole bunch of people? What would happen if they did that? You'd have a bunch of people quitting work. And so it's a little scary to me to have a lot of people quitting work if they had $50,000, $100,000, $200,000, $300,000 in taxes coming back. And so I would say we need to be a little bit careful with hoping on that kind of thing. And so I would say, do we get a few years back of taxes? Would they have a staltering rate of giving back taxes over several years? Maybe. But I think there would have to be a lot of careful consideration over this. Second point that I might say, do you know that there's another conversation that is really out there? I believe that the White Hats actually allowed the idiot black hats that I call the cabal, right? The anti-cabal that let the cabal do a UBI. And you go, well, what UBI are you talking about? Those Somalis in Minnesota that were given this massive amount of money with all those different kind of ugly things that they were doing. What did they do with those UBIs they were given in Minnesota? They went off and bought massive, ugly cars. I mean, just unbelievable cars. They were given all these kind of crazy amounts of money, and they flooded the systems in crazy ways. And so what would you do if you saw people that were what if everyone in America got $50,000? That is just about as bad as everyone getting hundreds of thousands of dollars or millions of dollars too. So we have to be kind of careful of flooding the country with even that kind of number. So I would say there has to be some level of, hold on, guys, what do we do about that? That's why I'm kind of careful on that kind of conversation on that point too. I go into and saying, yes, do I have a problem with a few years of taxes coming back? No, I don't have a problem with that. But I also go in very strongly in debt forgiveness because first off, there's no way for the systems to be able to pay back the debts. When you do that kind of thing and you go back into a gold-back standard, you'll see a payback to Americans right away. And that is the one way that I look at that. And I can prove that over and over again.
You know, you raised some great points. We'll sort of have a roundtable discussion here, and then we'll close out our broadcast. We just peaked into the 2-hour mark. Not that I got a news network behind me telling me I got a cut, but just in interest of everybody's time. But we're on to something that I want to put a disclaimer. Folks, there are certain things we, meaning figuratively speaking, we know about as fact. You know, certainly laws that have passed or things that we pretty darn certain and collectively agree upon that will be happening based on, great dot connecting and research. And as we spoke about a moment ago, none of us have a seat at the Q plus table using that analogy. But so what we're about to embark upon is purely speculation, but worthy of discussion. And I'm wondering, Dr. Scott, because you raise a great point about all this money coming back. In my opinion, remember, speculations and opinions. My opinion is all that stolen tax wealth should come back to us. I mean, if it was stolen and it was ours, I want it back, period. Okay, that's number one. Now, but to your point, all that money coming in at once, how productive is that for the currency and inflation and for the nation? Probably not very. Therefore, speculating, could it perhaps go into the sovereign wealth fund in some formulas that get dripped back to us? Could it go into our own stable coin QFS account, which will be fully established in the future? Again, speculation. In there, assigned to me in my name, here's that quantifiable number that they stole from you. And you're going to get that back, but you're not going to get it back all at once. There'll be a formula and a system with which to get it back to you. Could that tie into, I'm throwing a lot of stuff at the marker board, so take some mental notes. I'm looking for your feedback. Then you tie in Elon Musk, who says, high, H-I-G-H, high universal income coming soon, where people will no longer have to save and work will be optional. And then you factor in advances in AI and robotics to the equation of who's doing all the labor in the world. And then I don't want to unpack into all that, but we're talking about money coming back to us. So I just threw a lot of stuff at the dartboard. And then you raised also debt forgiveness. Well, that's another whole aspect of relief for us. People are looking for relief. Believe me, I am too. We all are. But we also have to take a look at this from a lot of different angles, because none of us really know for sure exactly how it's going to play out. And the last piece, that you can also explore mortgage fraud. How about all those bundled up mortgage frauds that collapsed everything in 08 and 09? Right? How much? What about all the interest payments we made? That's our labor, is it not? I worked for that. You worked for that. We worked and paid those payments, but yet it turned out to be a fraudulent bundle. We didn't know. Right? So there's a lot going on here. So I'm going to go back to open up the panel. We'll go to Rob, or whoever wants to start first. Your views about what Dr. Scott said and about all the stuff I just threw at the board. Again, we're just speculating here. But one thing we all agree on, as does Juan, we can't have all this money coming in at one fell swoop, because that's not going to serve the nation well at all. So any feedback from you, Rob?
Well, yeah, I mean, let's zoom out, okay? 30,000 foot, 40,000 feet. We're leaving Babylon, and Babylon's falling, okay? The Babylon system that we were in, there was a brother and a sister. One was the Federal Reserve that controlled the banks, which put us in debt. It controlled basically our labor. because we had to get a job, we had to go pay the debt, and we went into loan. We had to buy a car, we had to buy a house, we had to have kids, college, savings, retirement. Boom. The banking system and the debt system put us on the flywheel. Okay, so banks, the Rothschild banks, controlled our labor. The Rothschild legal system regulated our liabilities. The same system that created the debt created this maritime system where we're lost at sea chattel, the whole birth certificate thing. They traded us. They gave us no legal standing. We had to approach the bench. You had to pass the bar, go into you had to be represented. All of this was reverse engineered from the very false idea that these attorneys, these registered bar members, claimed jurisdiction over every square inch of planet Earth. They were the ones that got to determine the rules and issue rights and permissions and regulations and behaviors, whether we had to have a license to cut hair, whether we had to have a license to drop a fishing pole in a lake, whether we had a license to drive a car. I mean, again, they would change the language. If the Constitution says we have the right to travel, they would call it, you need to have a driver's license to transport. I mean, it was all kabuki theater. It was counterfeit law to regulate our liberties and counterfeit money to entangle us in debt. Both of those are being cut. Now, we, the people, are the sovereign government. We, the people, get to go back to a constitutional republic, elect the president that we want, elect the senators and congressmen that we want, but we, the people, have first and foremost got to take on the personal responsibility of not falling victim to what the scripture says. My people are destroyed for their lack of knowledge. If we don't know who we are, whose we are, what our unalienable rights are, where our rights come from, and how we can self-govern instead of outsource to government, it doesn't matter what we do. It doesn't matter how much money we have in the bank. Sooner or later, the scoundrels will take it all and we'll be a subjugated slave again. We've got to work on the wealth of our soul and then be responsible for self-governance, reconstituting a republic that was lost long ago. And that in and of itself is going to keep us all busy till we take our last breath. And if we really want to build a better place for our children and our grandchildren, that should be our focus. We're going to have plenty of money. We're going to have plenty of wealth to get by, but it's not about having enough money to live the lifestyle of retirement, golf, and vacations until we croak. It's going to be more about, I believe, rebuilding a hollowed out nation and leaving this a better place for our kids and grandkids.
That is an excellent, spot on 40,000 foot view. Thank you, sir. Dr. Scott, your closing comments on this subject or anything, and then we'll go to Will Barney.
I mean, something that has been happening ever since, when I started to wake up, I guess, in this crazy COVID timeframe. I was sitting there looking at this, listen, I had a miracle healing event in 2019. It's another conversation. I was going to die, and I woke up out in 3 days and was healed out of an ICU bed, walked out of an ICU room. It's a whole long story that this happened in 2019, and then COVID hit only 3 months later. But when I was trying to do, I was teaching end time issues, and then COVID hit at the same kind of time frame, and I was trying to answer this question, is this the mark of the beast, or is this COVID thing really happening? I was trying to do the calculus of this thing, and it wasn't really mixing together and learning like what was going on with everything. And I'd already been studying all the background of the QFS, but didn't know that this was the QFS and the Nasara thing, but didn't know the words of the Nasara thing. Any of the stuff didn't make any sense, right? And I was putting it all together as I was going along here. But what happens is that I was starting to realize this thing. I was still looking ahead, and I still am looking ahead. Even when we go through the fix, when we see the EBS go off and we're in the next phase of this, I believe that we are going to be in what this pre-tribulational time frame. We've not been through the tribulation. There's a pre-tribulational time frame before Jesus comes back. There's a time frame where we need to rebuild, the cities. We need to bring back. I believe that there's going to be 1 billion believers coming to Christ before Jesus comes back. So that is the quickening of my soul that I've spent a lot of time. That's why I wrote so many books. I've written so much about it. My book is one of my books here is right behind me. It's called Tribulation. Those are the foci of my life that I spend so much time on. And so, one of the things that happens, and some people kind of say, Scott, why don't you want the wealth to come out to the people? I'm like, listen, I want people, instead of working the 2 and 3 jobs that they've been doing in the past, that Captain Rob is talking about, and Will's talking about too, is that I want people to, not be in that rat race, but be able to work a job. If you're able at working age, be able to work a job, because guess what? I'm an audiologist. I see those people that don't work anymore and they die. We need to have people have a vision of things that they need to do in their life, and working is part of that. Work a job, do something that is meaningful in this realm, and not just sit around and do something meaningful, Ecclesiastes, and do it unto the Lord and move on, because there's so much that's happening. The world, and I'll leave you with this one thing. The Great Reset people want to have these things called 15-minute cities. Do you know what Trump is actually talking about? He's going, no, we're not going to do 15-minute cities, but we're going to actually create new cities. And he's not talking about the idiot 15-minute cities that are going to be prisons, but instead of Detroit necessarily, that is just a complete mess, we're going to have completely new wealthy looking cities that are going to be, that's going to be a great place to look. That's a great place to live and breathe and grow up in. And so we can have those white picket fences that we've been kind of dreaming of from the 1950s and 60s and 70s, and going, you know what? That's where I want to be at. And that's where I want to put my own wealth into, my own family into, and be. And that's what I want to see people doing and dreaming, because that's where I want to see people do. And so I always kind of say my job is about empowering people. So that's why I don't want to see people living fallow, but moving forward into that. And some people need to be moving forward because they've been waiting for this thing to happen, and they've been sitting around messing around. And I'm like, no, go to work, be active.
So well said, and I agree with you on all points. And folks, what comes to my mind is at the cusp now of the dawning of the golden age. And I hate to use all the sound bites, but the best is indeed yet to come. Will Barney, patiently waiting. Thank you, sir. Your views or comments and any closing points you'd like to raise?
Well, there's a number of things that you brought up, John. One of those is, what's going to happen if you just give the tax money back and everybody gets a big bonus? I think if they're over 60 years old, they're already kind of past the working age. That's a possibility. The Treasury has the capability of saying, you know what, if you're between 40 and 60, you're going to get this money back over 5 years, and we're going to give it monthly. Just stay employed. They could structure things like that would prevent this from becoming catastrophic and still give it back to the people. So they have that capability, and it's automatic deposit. Just stay employed, stay engaged, keep doing good things in your community. I don't think you need to stay in this. If you're in a job you hate, you don't have to stay there. I mean, you can move to another job, but the whole idea is be productive, right? Do the things that you love to do. The most important thing that we can do in life is and this is a big challenge for a lot of people in America. Half of the people in America are in a job they absolutely hate. Well, that's not really a great way to live, I don't think, for anybody. And ultimately, you should be doing something you like and enjoy to do, because if you're doing that, you're giving your very best self to everyone. It doesn't feel like work, it doesn't feel like drudgery, and you get to make a contribution. So I think everybody should be able to maneuver, and try to get into employment that suits them, that fits what they feel they're here to do. With that in mind, there is a way that we can build upon the events that are coming. We have to take our country back. We have to first say, you know what? The stolen government is gone. We're going to reelect a new government. We're going to take control. It's going to be by and for the people. When our country first was founded, there was very interesting. A lot of people don't understand some of the complexity of how things used to happen because it seems so far away. 250 plus years ago, we had the Declaration of Independence. But in those early days, not everybody got to vote. The people that got to vote were those that were landowners. And why did they get to vote? And this had nothing to do with men or women or anything. They sold you a story when they talked about women's suffrage in the 1920s and women couldn't vote. All that is baloney. What it meant was the people owned the land and the government represented the people. So the reason you had to be a landowner to vote was because if you owned a quarter acre that your house sits on, or if you had 50,000 acres, it didn't matter. As an owner, you control the politics on your property. Therefore, you have political power to grant government. That's how that worked. It just so happens that throughout the 1800s, it was the custom of the day that the husband would just hold the title in his name and he would take care of his wife. No one was ever prevented from voting as long as their name appeared on the deed, right? On the land. So they sold us this whole story. Oh, now we got to do this. Women need a right to vote. And that's how they sold it to us when they made these constitutional amendments. Well, what did that do? It created some very interesting dynamics. And that is that it created a situation where anyone could vote, whether you owned land or not. So now you had people contributing to votes that didn't have political power to grant government. And then shortly thereafter, they passed this new amendment allowing senators to be a popular vote instead of appointed by the legislature of the state. All of these things were designed to break down and crush our situation. Now here we are many years later, living in a fascist community. If you look up the definition of fascism, it basically means the corporatization of government. So we went from a constitutional republic to a fascist state. Okay, and enslaved and taxation everywhere. So this is problematic. We have to first take back our sovereignty, our government. We need to restore our republic. And then that republic, according to Constitution, the right to print money lies with Congress. That government can then print money and we can have asset-backed money because the Constitution says gold and silver is what you pay for debts. All debts should be paid, public and private. They should be backed by gold and silver. Well, if you don't have a money system that's not backed by gold and silver, which we haven't had for 100 years, we're violating the Constitution every day and we don't even know it by trying to pay off our houses with IOUs. Isn't it amazing? And yet, we're in this conundrum. So you can't really separate the financial issue without the sovereignty issue of the country. They are inseparable. One precedes and builds on the other. And so as we take this back, as we reclaim our country, And then we reclaim the right to have sound money that's based upon real value. We're going to find a whole lot of these problems, that the things that we complain about today, the suffering, is going to go away very fast. Can you imagine what it's going to be like when there's just no income tax? What happens when there's no property tax? Now, we might have an additional sales tax to cover some bills, but that's a consumption. It's a choice. You can choose to consume or not consume, okay? And you'll pay a little tax on that. But these things that are forced upon us that we can't control and have no choice in, like income tax or property tax, is going to go away. We're going to regain our sovereignty, our freedom, and ultimately it means responsibility. And with that responsibility, we rebuild our lives, we rebuild our families, we rebuild our communities. With that, it's about responsibility for all. We take care of our communities, our land, our families, and this is an incredible opportunity. I don't think you're going to hear this president ever use the words Nasara or Jassara. Don't think you're ever going to hear that. I think you're going to see steps made to restore that republic and set it back on the footing of we the people. Are we going to go back to where you need to be a landowner to vote? I don't know, but that's what it was. If we restore it back to its originality, it's kind of, we're going back there. And I think that that is appropriate, because then the people have power, political power. They can grant the government. Their vote means something. You see, and we've been disconnected from this, and it's time that we get it back. So we've had an incredible discussion. I'm here I am sitting here with four absolutely brilliant men who have wise minds, and your hearts are certainly tuned to what we need to be doing. I just want to thank all of you for letting me come and be a part of this discussion today. We have the opportunity to be engaged, and some of you out there that want to complain, or maybe you don't like what any of us have had to say, or there's comments that'll drop up in the comment section. Unless you've put your face out there and your voice out there and have been a part of the conversation publicly, you don't understand what it's like. But these men right here, they're on the front lines. They're putting their face, their reputations, their everything out front. And I know a lot of you have been already censored. You've had channels deleted. You've been debanked. Me too, right? It's happened to all of us. It is the price we pay for freedom. And that's why we stand here today, is because we're not going to let them take this country. We're going to get it back, and we're going to put it on the right footing. Thank you, John.
Thank you, Will. So well said, and from your heart. You know, folks, I've said this before, but it's very applicable as a coattail of what Will just said. When your children and grandchildren ask you, what were you doing when the global governance was being thrust down the collective throat of America and the world? What will your answer be? Freedom is up to us. And ask yourself, have you, to some extent, sacrificed your life, your fortune, and your sacred honor? Look in the mirror. Michael Jackson, all starts with the man in the mirror. And I want to conclude by saying this broadcast, this panel, really, one could say it sort of serves as a master class for the transition from fascist corporate government back to a constitutional republic, from debt slaves to prospering sovereign souls. That's kind of what this really turned out to be. And I thank you, gentlemen, very much for it. I'm going to close out with a couple of quick statements, and then we'll touch point with you, gentlemen, one last time. Gold and silver, for the record. Juan is on the broadcast I've been talking about. Hook, line, and sinker with a majority of us in the panels over this last year, that gold will be probably reset to its proper value of about $20,000 an ounce, perhaps a little bit more. Juan is also on the record agreeing that we will have a floor price more than likely be set. I hate to put words in Juan's mouth, so listen to the episode, but a floor price set for silver because of the strategic importance of silver. for industrialization and for self-defense. So he's also on the record. Don't have the exact numbers. Again, go listen to Juan on the broadcast of silver, maybe not this year, but coming sooner than we may think, to a price point of $260 to $300 an ounce. All of that we're still on record for, and Juan concurs as well, for whatever that may be worth to some of us. I also want to say one more thing. Juan has talked about, he's moved it up to using the metaphor of a hurricane. He says we're at category 3 level for what will ultimately be a category 7. But he's saying it's not tomorrow morning that we just get to 7. It's a process that'll unfold in 2027. And he really seemed very strong about what's to come, and it's 2027 in terms of what will raise the category level. I just wanted to get that out there. And the last thing, 10, 15-second answer from each person. We'll go with Will first. Clarity Act, does it pass or not? And if not, well, 60 seconds or less. Clarity Act, does it pass, yes or no? If not, what happens?
I'd like to see it pass, but I think you're going to witness a complete quagmire in the Senate. I think you're going to see failure, and I think it plays into the narrative of the buildup of getting to the military action. I think the people need to be absolutely disgusted with their civil government so that we are ready when the military takes over, when Commander-in-Chief Donald Trump takes the action that he can take, and we have something happen there. So I'm going to say they'll play out a show. They haven't even done a cloture vote. The cloture vote needs to precede the actual final vote. Will they get the cloture vote before they go on recess? Even if they do that, they still have to come back and do a final vote. So for me, this is Wednesday. They're supposed to be done on Friday. I'm going to say it's less than 50%, if you're asking me, John.
All right. Thank you, Will. Same question, 60 seconds or less if we can. Rob, Clarity Act, does it pass, yes or no? If not, what's our recourse?
It's win-win. I'm happy to hear, what if Will is correct, people will get disgusted. It will accelerate the fissure and get us faster towards sovereignty. I do believe I've heard Loomis and others say they will work either Saturday and or Sunday. They're going to pass the election. I think they're going to take a vote. I do believe a lot of this theatrics of Elizabeth Warren acting like she's more powerful than 83% of the people in the world that want clarity and all the other nations that have passed it. I think a lot of this is buffoonery, especially when you have the biggest institutions in the world saying they're behind it now. I think we're going to get the cloture vote before they go on break, and then it'll be automatic. The House will approve. Then they get the cloture at 60. Then they only have to have 50 votes plus JD Vance, right? So it'll pass when they get back in September. But price before law. If I'm right and they do pass the cloture, we do get the 60 and they take a recess, I think we'll start to see some kind of XRP and ISO top 8 tokens potentially go ahead and build that into the price. And we might see a very, very hot market in August, as Kim Clement talked about.
Interesting, fascinating. Well, we're all standing by. Dr. Scott, your closing comments on Clarity Act.
I would say no, I don't think it does pass. And I also kind of wonder if the SAVE Act does the same kind of, silliness with that too. I've always looked at Article 2, Section 3, that basically says that if one or the other, the president has the opportunity to say, you know what, if you guys can't do your own job, this is the Scott way of saying it, because it's 1787 when that was written. But the Scott way of saying, you guys can't do your job, you know what, I'm dismissing you and I'm going to pass it, because he can actually do it. And if we pass the SAVE Act, he'll just sign the Clarity Act as well as the SAVE Act into law, and then EBS is going. Because then nothing else matters, because at that point they're all done. and I think it's all over at that point.
Let's
Do I
see.
believe that we're going to
Mhm.
2027? I'm just not. I don't believe we're going that far. I think as soon as we get somewhere near the Save Act, if we get to November elections, if we have any of those kind of things happening, this thing is all over.
And if I
Well,
could
thank
say,
you all very much. Yes.
to your point, the two things that are national security issues, we have to have an election security, that's national vital infrastructure for a nation. We have to have currency. If we don't have an economy and currency, we don't have a military, we can't defend ourselves. So both
Right.
of these issues are national security issues. And if Trump has to declare a state of emergency and act them with emergency order, he can.
Uh,
Well,
there's one thing to keep in mind here as we look at what's happened over the last week. Donald Trump held a correspondence dinner at the Waldorf. It used to be the old post office that he turned into a beautiful hotel. So he holds it there, pulls out the hat, says Trump 2028, and he talks about, well, I'm announcing my run for, and everybody says, ha ha, big joke. But think about this for a second. His first term, he activates an emergency because of the COVID. COVID was an attack upon the election system. Let's not call it anything other than that. Now, it had other consequences. That was depopulation, okay? But it was an attack upon elections. So he declares a state of emergency, locks up Cheyenne Mountain, does all this stuff. Do you know that state of emergency has never been rescinded?
Correct.
So the Biden administration, even the current Trump administration, is still basically in a continuity of government.
Yep.
So the question remains, if elections are shut down, let's say November, and we have to allow time to rerun primaries, people to get in positions, and they set that whole thing up. If we've got to run that whole process, I'm thinking it's going to take a year, 14 months. It could probably move into early 28, potentially, before we get a vote. Donald Trump could be on the ballot. He could be elected as a president for a second term because this whole time was nothing but continuity of government.
Right.
Correct.
And nobody's thinking about that, but him pulling out that hat, come on.
That's right.
It says something.
That's the hat tip. That's the hat tip, no pun intended. Will, that was spot on, and that's exactly what Juan O'Savin talked about and went into great detail on that. I keep plugging that broadcast because I've been interviewing Juan on and off for 6 years. This was one of the most extraordinary discussions he and I had on camera. Thanks for raising that. I want to sign us off on this broadcast. We'll go back to Dr. Scott. What's the best place for people to follow you so they're not following impersonators and frauds? Best place to connect up with you? And again, tell everybody about your current book, what it's about, and where people can pick up a copy.
Yeah, so it's drscottyoung.com. We just made a new website. We had a website. We just had to update our website, so you can go to Tribulation. That's the new book. On our website, we have all kinds of new timelines that you guys can download for free. The new book is, you can kind of pick it up on Amazon, but it's on our website. It's $35. It's a color book that kind of goes through the whole tribulation with that. But a lot of my books are on end time issues, some on Revelations of the Red Pill. It's probably my most purchased book out there with that.
Thank you very much, and thank you for your work and your contribution to to humanity. That's really what this boils down to, and we appreciate you being here. You've been a great guest. Hopefully, we'll have you back on this and perhaps other broadcasts. And again, to one of my producers, Sandy, please take note and follow up with the doctor and get the link to that video of all the Q pluses. I love that kind of
stuff. I already
stuff.
sent it to
Captain
her, so
Rob.
It's there.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Captain Rob, close us out. Best place to follow you and your work.
Yeah, just my website is cool.show, KUWL.show, and it links to all of my properties. It's got my bio. You can contact me, Substack, YouTube, Twitter, all of the places or X, where I spend a lot of time, but you can find me there.
Great. Thank you again. And Will Barney, best place for people to reach out to you and follow the work you do at enochgs.com.
Certainly, best place is to go to the website, enochgs.com. There is a contact us page there where you can find all the links to X.com, Truth Social. We are on YouTube and Rumble as well. We put out global updates a couple times a week. We try to do 2 a week if we can do so. And we do share a lot of stuff about what's going on. We try to bring the receipts. So it is, I think, helpful for a lot of people. What we do is we're building out a system to launch and manage and sustain humanitarian projects. We're going to start here in America, but we expect to spread that across the entirety of the world. So if you're involved in projects or want to do projects, that's probably a discussion we'd like to have. Thanks, John.
Beautiful. Thank you, Will. Thank you, Rob. And thank you, Scott. And thank you to our viewers. We've been live on several platforms. Within 24 hours, the show is typically cut and fully distributed. Please do share the broadcast far and wide. We need to remain informed, empowered, and connected. And panels like this very much so help us do that. So thank you all. God bless you. And I'll be signing off here now. Join us for free at jmcbroadcasting.com. Click on free subscription or explore our premium portal and come visit with Scott McKay and I this month. We've had Will Barney, we had Captain Rob, we've had Derek Johnson, we've had Juan O'Savin, Sheila Holman, Mike Jaco, and many others each month featured in the premium portal to get your questions answered. Thank you all very much. Stay safe, everyone, and may God be with you.
Your hard-earned assets are under attack and may be in harm's way. Many people are confused, thus concerned about what is going on with the currency, the markets, and the economy. A great change is underway. With the private wealth coach consult, of which John Michael Chambers discusses in greater detail in Module 10 of the Wealth Coach University, you can break through procrastination as you become informed, empowered, and connected. JMC has created a system whereby you can avail yourself to a team of like-minded professionals to help you navigate this unprecedented minefield and meet privately with John Michael Chambers. The Wealth Coach University was launched based upon years of experience as a successful former financial advisor to help you, Goots, get out of the system.
Hello, this is John Michael Chambers. I retired after nearly 15 years as an independent financial advisor in 2008 to heed a higher calling. My biography can be accessed by visiting wealthcoachuniversity.com. I know what goes on behind the scenes in the world of Wall Street and investments, as well as having my finger on the pulse of the global financial reset of which we are presently engaged. Let's discuss the Wealth Coach Consult. I am not a financial advisor, and I do not give specific financial advice, nor can I assist you in the repositioning of your assets. I will, however, provide answers to your questions to the best of my ability and provide a high-level analysis of you and your situation. At the conclusion of our consult, if one is prepared to take the next step and begin repositioning assets to Goots, G-O-O-T-S, get out of the system, I will make available to you the appropriate individuals in my resource network. In the financial world, these are licensed, seasoned, patriot professionals that can assist in this area and to help you get from where you are to where you need to be as soon as possible, both confidentially and with confidence. Visit wealthcoachuniversity.com. By doing so, you gain access to the 10 free educational video PowerPoint modules. Then schedule your Wealth Coach consult with me today. I do look forward to speaking with you. It's time.